This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I can always tell when Jamie Glazov or Robert Spencer or Pamela Geller have written a column about Islamic terrorism in Europe or closer and closer to our own shores, because I always get a ton of email from the readers of my book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, or from over at my YouTube channel. They say, Colin, this looks a lot like what you're talking about. Are there any similarities in how you document black mob violence, black criminality, black on white crime, and how reporters and public officials ignore, deny, condone, excuse, and encourage it, and what Jamie's talking about, or Robert or Pamela Geller are talking about? I said, no, they're not really that similar. They're identical. I mean, how many attacks have we seen in Europe or here where the very first reaction from the reporters and the public officials is, well, we don't really know what's behind the attacks. We don't know what motivates them. I mean, on this country, I'm thinking of the workplace violence down at Fort Hood, where the Islamic killer did everything except write out the Quran in his own blood at the scene of the mass murder. Still, we contemplate, I wonder what Islam had to do with that crime. Well, I do the same thing here with black crime, black on white crime, black criminality, and black mob violence. I document how reporters and public officials are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it all over the country. I mean, the best example is probably the most recent example. I mean, I document thousands of these things in my book and on my YouTube channel. But why don't we talk about Wisconsin, Milwaukee? You guys remember just a couple weeks ago, a black guy was running from a cop. The black guy had a stolen gun, turned around, pointed at the cop. The cop killed him dead. Soon after, there were riots. Lots of burned down buildings, lots of white people assaulted, lots of cops attacked. Things like lots of threats to do a lot more. But, okay, so that was on the one hand. On the other hand, we had the press in Milwaukee, and this was before the national press had a chance to get there because it was still kind of fresh. So the local media is telling people, it's like, wow, this is kind of isolated. We've never seen this here before. And this doesn't really happen in Milwaukee. Well, people in Milwaukee were going, what are you talking about? This happens in Milwaukee all the time. I mean, those are the people who obviously do more than just watch local news. I mean, why don't we think about, just in that neighborhood, from 1 month before, there was a large-scale episode of black mob violence where black people attacked cops, threw rocks, defied police, attacked other people, destroyed property, created an amazing amount of mayhem and chaos.
Cell phone video caught this chaotic activity last night near Sherman and Burleigh. A crowd about 100 strong, throwing rocks at police and a county bus, among other things.
Other people in Milwaukee remember the Wisconsin State Fair from a couple of years ago. Hundreds and hundreds of black people rampaging through the neighborhood. In the fair, outside of the fair. This is in Milwaukee. Luckily, we had the 911 calls so we could really document exactly what was going on. We wouldn't have to rely on the public officials and the reporters going, no, I don't think it was really that big of a deal. Well, let's listen to a few of these calls.
They pounding all the cars, 7 other cars. They just opened the door and pounded my friend in the face.
My mom just got attacked by a flash mob, and her eye is bleeding. Bleeding all over.
Most of the callers tell dispatchers they see a racially motivated melee.
All bunch of black dudes that just jumped me. I'm bleeding all over it.
There's a black on white fight in the middle of the street.
We saw black guys get out of a car with a gun, and they're going around jumping people. We need some cops out here.
And now we come back to the present for the greatest example of all. This was again in Milwaukee. CNN pulled what I called a reverse Zimmerman. The dead guy's sister had a little press conference. It's weird how dead guys' sisters can have press conferences now. But anyway, she had a press conference And CNN did a big story on the conference where it said the dead guy's sister was calling for peace. Let's give it a watch.
With his sister calling for peace.
Don't bring the violence here and the ignorance here.
Well, CNN cut the conference off before she finished her statement. Because what she really said was, don't bring the violence into the ghetto, take it out into the white suburbs.
Tell his mama y'all sorry for her loss. Burning down shit ain't gonna help nothing. Y'all burning down shit we need in our community. Take that shit to the suburbs. Burn that shit down. We need our shit. We need our weed. I don't wear it, but we need it.
So this is just about the worst case of media deceit, denial, and delusion that I've seen in a long time. But it really illustrates, not that the people at CNN are bad, though they probably are, it really illustrates how the default position of reporters and public officials when it comes to Islamic violence and when it comes to black violence, black and white crime, black criminality in this country, how they have identical responses. Ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, even lie about it. I mean, how long ago? It seems like in a way it seems like a short time. In a way it seems like a long time ago. The 5 police officers were killed in Dallas, and we know that one of the reasons why they were killed is because they were not wearing bulletproof vests. Because what we learned in Ferguson and what we learned in Baltimore is that preparing for a riot, cops showing up at a riot in riot gear causes a riot. Did you know that? It's true. I've heard it on TV many times. Many of the same reporters who are telling us, as people are throwing Molotov cocktails in the streets of Ferguson and in Baltimore, these same reporters are doing live remotes from the same places where people are throwing Molotov cocktails, and they're telling us that these demonstrations were largely peaceful. You ought to Google that expression, largely peaceful. You'll see it being attached to some of the most violent episodes of racial violence in this country. And that's what we heard about Dallas, that the Black Lives Matter protest was largely peaceful. And afterwards, they stuck a microphone in the face of a black activist, and he said, yeah, well, I'm sorry about the cops. But you know what? This is a wake-up call for white people who have to realize that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And, this is what we're good. This is what happens when you have all this white racism hurting black people all over the country. Black people fight back. After we learned that the 5 officers were dead, large group of black people, of a couple of hundred, went to a local convenience store and looted it. They beat up the employees and they took out all kinds of beer and candy and sodas and stuff. And they didn't run away. They took it to the parking lot where they celebrated the death of 5 police officers while they were being protected or surrounded by cops who looked on per their orders not to do anything to arrest the peaceful demonstrators. Now, if I told you that there were black people dancing and celebrating the death of 5 cops in Dallas at the hands of a black person who was upset about black people being attacked by cops all the time for no reason whatsoever, if I told you that, would you believe it without me showing you the video? Probably not. But that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, this example in Dallas was kind of an anomaly. We have a press and we have a group of public officials who are doing everything they can to minimize, to deny, to kind of hide from us the true nature of how of the black violence and how it's so wildly out of proportion in this country. And so that's the bad news. The good news is there are shows like Jamie Glazov, people like Robert Spencer, people like Pamela Geller, who are truth tellers, who are telling us the truth. They're telling us the truth about Islamic violence. I'm trying to do my bit to tell the truth, expose the truth about black violence, black on white crime, and how reporters and public officials are so complicit in it. And that always kind of leads to 2 questions. The first question is, well, Colin, what can we do to get the New York Times, Time Magazine, Washington Post, LA Times? What can we do in NBC? How can we get them to pay attention to this? How do we get them to cover this? They're never going to cover this. They are not. That's just not part of their DNA. Their DNA is denial, deceit, and delusion. Whether we're talking about black violence, whether we're talking about Islamic violence, that's in their DNA. So we cannot wait for them to figure it out. They will never figure it out. And that brings us to the second question I get a lot. Well, what can I do? What can we do? What can I do, Colin, to help people see what's going on? Well, everybody has to do what they can. Some people work in a cubicle, and if you go around saying, hey, I just watched this video on Front Page Magazine with Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller and Jamie Glazov, and they're saying these Islamic people are trying to kill us. Well, you're taking your career. You're putting your career at risk. And the same thing for people who watch my videos or read my books. I call black victimization the greatest hoax of our lifetimes. I mean, we pick up the newspaper, we see it every day, right? Black Lives Matter is constantly telling us that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism. Cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. That is the greatest lie of our lifetimes. But to borrow a phrase from Winston Churchill, when you have when you have such a huge lie like this, you often have to surround it with a bodyguard of little lies to kind of back it up. And one of the greatest little lies is something we also hear on TV almost every day, which is, Colin, we have to have a conversation about race in this country. The president says it. Every newscaster says it. Every talking head says it. But what they mean is we have to have a monologue about race, and you, Colin, everybody else, all the other people in this country have to admit that white racists are screwing this country up and that black people are relentless victims. I mean, just a couple days ago in Baltimore, a high-ranking member of the Baltimore Police Department and one of the guys in charge of the Baltimore Police Officers Union, he was suspended for calling Black Lives Matter people thugs. He's just a list of more than a dozen public officials, firemen, cops, paramedics, lots and lots of other people who this year have been fired for telling the truth about racial violence. How the whole thing is a con game, a hoax, a lie. Yet we want to have a conversation about this. So I don't want you to get fired from your job by telling the truth about this. But you know what? Everybody's in a different position. Some people can tell the truth about this. Some people can make their own YouTube channel. They can post Jamie's and Robert's and Pamela's stuff on your Facebook page and on your Twitter account. But a lot of people are not. Maybe you're a cop. Maybe you're a firefighter. Maybe your wife's a teacher. People get fired for what their spouses say as well. And so the answer to that is, if you can't be a part of the fight, you have to support the people who are. That's why I want you to subscribe to Jamie's YouTube channel, the one you're watching right now. That's why I want, and if you're reeling with the feeling, send him, contribute to his channel. Help them expose the truth about radical, I don't even use that word anymore. Help them expose the truth about Islamic terrorism in Europe, around the world, coming here. That's how you support a Robert Spencer. That's how you support a Pamela Geller. That's how you support what I'm trying to do, exposing the big hoax of our generation, black mob violence. So subscribe to Jamie. Support them. There's a lot you can do. Read Jamie's books. Read Robert's books. Read Pamela's books. I know you've got a lot of friends who haven't read them. You don't have to give them a lecture. You give them the book and you say, have you read this? That's all you need to say. Have you read this? Or if you show them some videotapes like this one, you say, have you seen this? There's a mountain of denial out there, and we need a mountain of evidence to bring that mountain down. That's what we're doing. I'm proud to be part of it with Jamie, Robert, Pamela, and you. This is Colin Flaherty. Just remember one thing. Don't make the black kids angry.